one of the projects that I talk about a lot on our podcast is Battersea Power Station. That was the one project that we were winning. It was a massive project, and we were fighting with each other because both project teams kind of knew there wasn't much money in it. As a subbie, you're only ever like 6 months away from, oh my God, I've got hundreds of thousands of fixed costs each month. I've got nothing coming in.
When working with a surveyor from a contractor, there's something to be said about the relationship side of it. If you can nurture a good relationship as a subbie with a QS, I think the psychology behind it that they don't actually want to bash you.
How did we allow ourselves to get into a position where we create these amazing engineering projects? Like the tier ones are making sub 5% on every single project. It's just ridiculous. We've made such good waves with the product. We're already kind of at that 35-40% mark. We know we can kind of get it to 50-54% of time saved for QS, and what that could do for the industry. Something has gone drastically wrong with our industry. I've run QS teams, I've been a QS at different stages. Our belief system around why subbie bashing happens is
Mr. Hemming.
Hello, how you doing?
Not bad, my friend. Welcome to SQFT-Stories.
Thanks for having me on.
That's all right, mate. No worries at all. I've been really looking forward to this episode. As per our pre-chat, there's loads of topics I want to dive into around the industry and around what you guys are doing. But I always like to start, your journey into construction, and let us know how that went.
So, journey into construction. I think, you hear a lot of people now in the industry kind of saying, why can't we advertise construction to, kids at school, like make them excited about it? And certainly my experience was I never wanted to go. I never saw construction as a place to go, right? I speak to a lot of people on our show, and like their dad runs a business, or, there's kind of, it's almost like a family lineage to kind of draws you into the industry. For me, it certainly wasn't. I wanted to be a journalist.
A journalist?
I wanted to be a football writer, right?
Oh, really? You're a football fan?
I am, yeah. I support Birmingham City, so not a very good.
Who? Birmingham.
Who?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't.
What?
Obviously, I know the other. I couldn't work out what you said.
Who?
Birmingham.
It's my Brummie accent, isn't it? Anyway, so I wanted to be a football writer, but I didn't want to go to university. I wrote to every paper literally in the country, and they said go to university.
Yep.
Didn't want to, so I found a job. I was looking for job adverts that would put me through like an apprenticeship, and I found a trainee QS. I asked my mate, what is a trainee quantity surveyor? He said, don't go and do that. You'll be miserable for the rest of your life counting bricks. But ended up doing it. I kind of came in just from a job advert, and I would never have perceived construction as an industry to work in, but there's no doubt that I love working in it.
Why would you though, as well, to an extent? Because when you look at it, I post regularly about this on LinkedIn, is when you look at it from a holistic perspective and you look at it from a young person making their way into the industry, in a world where you can literally do whatever you want nowadays. I get it was different 20, 30, 40 years ago, but in the modern day, you can technically do whatever you want in this world in terms of an occupation.
Well, you can, but
to an extent,
yeah.
But there's podcast host is an occupation nowadays, and there's so many different alternative occupations that isn't getting your hands dirty on a building site. So it's not the most glamorous industry for people to want to go into. When you're sat 16, 17 years old, what do I want to do in my life? Do I want to go be a brickies labourer? And, do I want to be doing that? And I'm talking more of the site side of things. The site side of things is a concern as such for the industry, because there isn't so many people coming through. And I can see why. Mate, if I'm 30 now, if I was 15, 16, I wouldn't want to go down the route. I went down a carpentry route. I wouldn't want to do that again if I did it again.
But it's the stories that you tell, right? Because there isn't that many industries where, there's so much to unpack about it, right? Because we were talking about this. If you say I work in engineering, like in the pub, people would be like, that's pretty amazing. Tell me about it. That's really technical, blah, 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 really good.
Yeah.
I work in architecture. That's really amazing. That's really, you build all these amazing buildings. You work in construction, it's all of a sudden you're like turned off. So, But engineering and architecture is construction, but you say construction, you've already used the words like dirty on site, blah, blah, blah. Like, it does have that connotation, but it doesn't need to. And, through my career, there's projects that I've worked on, and I'm sure it's the same for you. And the stories that we could tell, but we don't tell, I go through London, and there's like 4 or 5 different skyscrapers that I worked on, and you think, oh, that's an amazing job. Or the same in Birmingham, all over the country. And you could tell those stories, but we don't. But the reality is now, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, A, in construction, you can do amazing things. And B, I don't think there's that many industries where you can just go from 16-year-old chippy to MD of a huge contractor, which is the story of so many of even like the tier ones or the big subcontractors, right? It's someone from site who's taken it all the way through.
That's a very interesting perception, to be fair, and I'm glad you've had a bit more of a positive connotation about it and spin on it, because there is a lot of negativity around that side of things.
Yeah.
And when you put it like that, it does make a lot of sense. Like from a 16-year-old, you can go from apprentice and you can work your way up the construction ladder as such, and then going into an MD of a tier one. Like you said, I'm sure you've interviewed many people on your podcast people who have actually done that as well.
Something happens, right, between the age of 8, I don't know, maybe the age of 10 and the age of 16. And it's a strange thing because, and I'm just about to be a dad, right? So I'm thinking about this all the time. But as kids like Lego, right? Kids like building, kids like, creating things, whether that's, engineering, architecture, construction. There's a thing that kids love doing, like to a man almost. Almost all of them love it, right? And then all of a sudden you say, what job do you want to do? Well, I definitely don't want to be in construction because it's, you see, like, not calling you out, but, like the dirty, all these things that we all say, it doesn't make much sense as to why all of a sudden... somewhere between... No,
I see what you mean.
Yeah, like all of a sudden everyone hates it. And we've done a couple of shows where we've explored it. And we were with a young project manager. She was 28, 29. She was doing like a careers day at school. And she had like a construction stand. And she was saying, it was amazing actually. The kids were all like, okay, so I could be a project manager in construction. I could work on this, could build these, like really engaged. And the parents were like, oh no, you don't want to be in construction. So it's I don't know what to say, but I don't think we should be. I think we need to tell better stories about the projects that we work on. And I'm sure you could tell me right now there's a project somewhere where you think, oh, that was an amazing job that I worked on. Look at it.
We're doing one. In fact, we're doing one at the moment. Rarely do we work in Central London, but we are in Central London at the moment, and we're helping fit out. It's residential. We don't usually do residential, but we're fitting out a 9,000 square foot penthouse flat in. Just off of Vauxhall Bridge. It's a beautiful project. Like it's an amazing scheme. Some of the details within the project itself is only someone that's such a skilled tradesman can do. And it's an amazing project from just from procuring the project and going through the whole project itself and all the individual trades and the surveyors and the project managers and the designers and everybody that's involved in it. It's like it's a really positive site as well. It's a really good team.
And that is happening like on 10,000 different projects across the UK right now, let alone the world, right? And even just the way you describe that, this amazing project, intricate details, there's so much going on. We don't tell that story, do we? But you know it in your heart when you go past that building in 10 years, that job I worked on was amazing. I have it with certain projects that I worked on, right? So, yeah, in short, I think we should be...
more
selling ourselves a bit more. Yeah, exactly.
The old classic drive past a job you've done, like I did that one. When you're in your car.
Yeah.
You're like, I did that one.
Yeah, exactly.
So the route come in the industry through predominantly wanting to be a football journalist, to be fair, and then you've ended up being a trainee quantity surveyor. So give us a short description of the whole training process and then what you ultimately did after that.
Yeah, so I was always working as a subcontractor, always kind of working in design and build, subcontracting as a building envelope contractor. So I am from the Midlands. I originally I did 5 years kind of as a trainee assistant QS. I got to at a company called Ali Met Systems. Absolutely amazing company. Had amazing mentors around me as well. So I just learnt loads, and we were kind of doing rain screen cladding, stick curtain walling, all that good stuff. And then after 5 years, where I was concurrently doing 1 day a week at university to get my degree. After 5 years, I then went to London and worked for a company called Perma, which is kind of, they're always in like the top 2 or 3 building envelope curtain walling contractors in the world, and I was kind of lured down there. Like back in the day on LinkedIn when a recruiter used to send you a message and say, I've seen your profile, and you felt like you were being headhunted, right? Because it was a new thing, but the reality was they were just sending out 1,000 random messages. But anyway, it was for this project, the walkie-talkie, 20 Fenchurch Street. Yep. And that was a project that I was just desperate to work on even prior to that message. And so I moved down, worked on that project, worked on the Shard, worked on Battersea Power Station, loads of amazing projects. And then, left and set up Scenic.
Just a short break from the episode, which I really hope you guys are enjoying. This podcast has been invaluable for me, and I hope it's providing a lot of value for yourselves. If you could just do me one small favor and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform, not only does it help me and the podcast, but it also helps share stories and insights from the industry that we find ourselves in. I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. How did you find working as a QS were you predominantly a subcontractor?
Yeah.
So what was your experience like working as a QS for a subcontractor, working for, I assume, Tier 1, well, those projects, they must be
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, for both companies, for Allumet, you would be working for, like, Tier 1s and Tier 2 clients. For Permasolisa, it was always Tier 1s. It was difficult, but, well, I was going to say enjoyable. I don't know if it was enjoyable. I mean, I found the process, I was like managing a team of, like, 10, 12 QSs by the time I was 24. So my trajectory was really, really good.
Yeah, that's incredible, by the way, at 24 years old.
Yeah, I made really good progress. So I was actually I was desperate to climb the ladder. And it's quite linear, isn't it? Trainee QS, assistant QS, senior. Like, you can kind of just see the steps. So I enjoyed that. And I felt I was quite good at it.
Yeah. But what about like the struggles or something? Did you have any? Because so there's so much footage and there's always some stories featured somewhere around how QSs struggle working for subcontractors, for Tier 1 contractors.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I feel like a lot of people I see on LinkedIn are posting around how they're fighting a losing battle sometimes.
Yeah, I mean,
it seems like it's got better. But, when you were doing it then, was there any experiences you've had?
Yeah, I mean, I came into the industry in October 2007, which I pretty much came in as the financial crash kind of happened. And it was my initiation was a very ugly period, right, where it was very difficult. Yeah, I mean, for sure, there was a lot of projects where either maybe we didn't perform to 100% or the client didn't perform to 100% or maybe both of us didn't perform to 100%, and then you're kind of punishing or feeling like you're being punished unnecessarily. There was a lot of claims, a lot of horrible projects. I mean, one of the projects that I talk about a lot on our podcast is Battersea Power Station, because it was one of the most special projects that we ever worked on, but we were contracted by Carillion. And it was just before Carillion kind of went and no longer ceased to exist. And that project, from start to finish, about 4 or 5 years, was just an absolute slogfest. We were fighting during tender stage. It was it makes absolutely no sense. We were kind of desperate. They were probably themselves quite desperate, and it was just
desperate to win the work.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, the reality being that. That was at the back end of like 2012, 2013, and the financial crisis actually took quite a long time to go away, right? And so I think in that year that was the one project that we were winning. It was a massive project, and we had to win it, despite the fact that honestly, the tender stage would have gone on for 12 months, of which maybe 6 months we were selected, and we were fighting with each other during those 6 months, because both project teams kind of knew it was going to be a horrible job and there wasn't much money in it and so on. So long answer to your question, right, is
no, but there's something to, sorry to interrupt as well, Paul, but there's something to be said about that that experience there, whereby quite a lot of the time people they might be desperate for work, so they do resort back to working with contractors who they know they're going to have a difficult time with, but they really need the work, so they've got to keep sometimes their guy's busy, they've got to pay their mortgage, all these things get taken into consideration, so they will go for that work, and they know full well what they're getting themselves into.
We knew we knew, and that is the challenge with construction, isn't it? Is you're always, as a subby, you're only ever like 6 months away from, oh my God, I've got hundreds of thousands of fixed costs each month, but I've got nothing coming in. So that is the challenge. And again, like, how different could the world be? It could be very different, couldn't it?
Yeah, and the reason why I say that as well is because so much gets made of main contractors and tier ones treating subcontractors badly, but they full well know what they're signing up to, and by no means am I caveating of the treatment, of the bad treatment, unfair treatment of subcontractors, but they full well know what they're getting into. And you hear some stories of people getting into contracts with tier 1s and tier 2s who they've been in contract with before, they've been shafted before, but they'll go back into contract with them and they'll lose money again on the job.
Yeah.
And I get they might be desperate for work, but also it's almost like one bad job can completely end a company, can completely dissolve a company. And so I just wanted to pick up on something you said in there when...
Yeah. I mean, I think the reality is that, and we'll kind of get on, I guess, to why we built C-Link and the psyche behind why we built C-Link the way we did, is that main contractors. So, I guess kind of like on my show, I'm always kind of saying I'm always taking the subby side, right? Because that's just like innate to me. My experience with subby side, main contractors have got have got all the problems that subbies have got. Like, they don't know where the next project's coming from. They've got even more fixed costs than subbies have, right? And it's not easy. And we've just got to find a way to just recalibrate. And I find, over the few hundred episodes that we've done, I found myself recalibrating a little bit how I feel about it, because I don't think it's actually that helpful to just say everything is subby bashing. We've got to try and see both sides of the story.
No, you are right. I find myself sometimes teaming up with the subbies as well, and that's the only reason I mentioned it there about that side of things. And I actually wanted to touch on the subby bashing. Have you experienced that? I'm hoping you haven't done it. But
no, I mean, well, again, this is a topic which, so subby bashing, I think I have experienced it, right? And I think there's probably times where I have secondary subcontracted, and those subcontractors below me have felt I have subby bashed them. Whether that's right or wrong, I think that's probably like a fair reflection. And I definitely feel like I've been subby bashed, whether or not the main contractor feels they were subby bashing me or they were doing everything right.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think the reality is there, right? I think what our belief system around why subby bashing happens is QSs have kind of one and only one KPI, and that is margin, right? And so if I explain, I talked to you about I went from trainee, assistant, QS, blah, 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 blah. I used to always think, oh, God, it's really great being a QS, isn't it? Because I can go into my yearly review and say, on that variation, I made you 12,000. On that one, I did, like, you can literally say, whereas my mate, the two of us both started as trainees, he was a site manager, I was a QS. For him, it was quite difficult to say, oh, well, that project finished 4 weeks late, but it could have finished 8 weeks. As opposed to, it's very simple as a QS. Yeah. You're measured on money, right? And so, therefore, if you're measured on money, and you're looking around and thinking, God, how am I going to make money on this job? And from high above, you get given a contract, which I, as the main contractor, can give you as a subcontractor, and know that you don't have the resource to work out what's in there, and you're just going to sign it, because if you don't sign it, someone else will sign it. So with all of those things kind of combining, and the sole driver being your KPI is money, you're going to end up with subby bashing, right? As opposed to, and again, we've talked about this a huge amount, if a QS was actually measured on, margin, because it's obviously important, we're all in business, supply chain feedback, like main contractors are now struggling to find subcontractors, right? We're all struggling because there isn't many subcontractors in the industry. So you want to keep them happy. So if you did like how we always do, how did that subby perform? Oh, we'll give them 4 out of 10 for this and 3 out of 10 for that. If you did the converse and said to your subbies, how was the project team? How did the QS perform? What did he work with you? Did you collaborate? Blah, blah, blah. And if you, so say you got back, it's me in that end of year report again, right? And I'm saying, oh, well, I made you 12,000. I made 170,000, so you need to give me a pay rise. And they said, well, yeah, but you've ruined 3 key subcontract relationships. They're never going to work with us again. Next time around, my behaviour is going to be different, right? And so
that's an interesting way to look at it.
I just don't think that we are anywhere near dynamic enough with targeting QSs. But it wraps itself up in that same thing of we never know where the next job is in 6 months, right? So QS is that's why the KPI is money, because money matters, right? So I just think you need to have a blended view of what actually happens, because you will have worked with QSs who made your life a misery, and then the same client, so you got a contractor who has 10 QSs, and you get a tender from one of them, you think, I don't want to work on that job because she's horrible, or he's horrible. But then the other guy, you think, I'd work with that.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's an interesting way to look at it, actually. And we've had a couple of experience with surveyors, and don't get me wrong, the majority of our experiences have actually been okay, because usually you can work with them, and subbies are cheeky as well sometimes with certain ways that they can play the game. And like you said, if they are predominantly if their sole job is financial, then the only metric of measurement of success for them is finances. So the only thing they can go back to their seniors and the people above them, directors and CEOs, is how much money they've either saved or made on a job. Yeah. So like, if they're not doing that, they're not doing their job in theory.
I'm telling you, I've run QS teams. I've been a QS at different stages. I know loads of QSs. There is never ever been a QS who has not measured on money. And if you're measuring you on money, and I know more about a contract than you, and you send me a notice on day 8, I'm just going to say, sorry mate, but I won't tell you at the time. I'll make you do the job. Like, this is the reality, right? I'll let you do the work, and then I'll say at final account stage, day 8, you were meant to do it on day 7. Sorry, unless the job is doing really, really well, and so I'm making it sound really like punitive there, right? But in the worst case, and we know those jobs which are really bad, go back to Battersea, that's what was happening. So I think you've got to just create an environment where QSs are not driven just by money.
Yeah.
And
it's difficult though, isn't it? Like, how, I wouldn't even know where to start in terms of like trying to give different derivatives for a QS to succeed on a project or just succeed in their career. Because, like you said, if it is solely finances, then I wouldn't know what else. Like,
I hear you. There's loads though, right? Yeah. You could do it on like procurement. You could do it on program. You could do it on margin. You could do it on subby feedback, supply chain feedback.
That's interesting.
You could do it on like non-recoverable variations, right? So like, if there is a variation to us, and it's also you as my subby, like, we'll do it together. Let's work on it together. Let's both be rewarded for it. There's loads of things you could do, but no one thinks about it.
Yeah, interesting.
Just think about money.
Just the bottom line.
Well, let me ask you though, right? Because you said to me before we were recording, can I ask you about subby bashing?
Yeah.
I don't have any QSs on. You're the first QS to come on, right? I feel honoured. I'm honoured.
Don't flatter yourself, mate.
But like, for you, what's your experience with QSs? Because I feel it's a bit unfair that there's this like overarching narrative that QS is subby bashing. I think that it's far more nuanced than that, and there's a load of QSs that are doing a load of good work.
Definitely. Yeah, so we've actually pretty much 90 to 95% stopped working with tier 1 and tier 2 contractors. We, in fact, 100% tier 1s.
Okay.
We don't do any work with anymore. We have done before. We more target like landlords and tenants and end users as such. But the ones that we do work with, they're more SMEs, I'd say. I've actually got positive experiences with them. I've had negative experiences before, but I've got positive experience with them. And I tell you why, it's because I think, that there's something to be said about when working with a surveyor from a contractor. There's something to be said about the relationship side of it. If you can nurture a good relationship as a subby with a QS, then I think the psychology behind being not friends, but being in a like a really good working relationship, and if you really get to know them and you're almost like you are friends, I suppose. I think the psychology behind it, that they don't actually want to bash you, they don't really want to do that. So like, my experience, the surveyors that I've worked with, I've tried to build a relationship previous with them before just going into contract phase of them. Just, I've never met you before, you're the QS, I'm the subby, here's the contract signed, we've never spoken before. We don't really work with tier 1s anymore as such, but if I was to, I try and look at the relationship side of things before. But in terms of negative experiences, we've had them, and like stupid little games that they play and silly little things that they do, which we all know they're going to do. but you can't stop them from doing it. And
that 8 days versus 7 days.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, I think something from our perspective as well before, and what a lot of other people do as well, I think, is they're not commercially minded enough to be in contract with people like that.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is they don't understand, and I see this loads on LinkedIn, predominantly LinkedIn, and I feel like sometimes my opinions are warped a little bit because I'm so I'm so hell-bent on LinkedIn, and I'm posting all the time and talking to people on it, so I feel like sometimes it might be a little bit warped by it. But, you know, like, I see people who aren't commercially minded about their business, and they aren't up together with the regulations around contracts, so they don't actually understand what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that they're at pitfall themselves, because they're the ones that have signed it predominantly to start with, so that they've almost got, I suppose it's going back to what I said earlier in terms of the subbies of signing up, and they know what they're getting themselves into. So, you know, like, in terms of in a roundabout way, I don't know if I've answered your question, but in terms of experiences, they've been okay, to be fair. And, you know, if you look at the whole topic of conversation holistically, it's very negative all the time. But when you do individualize it to people who have worked with them, the majority of the experiences are actually okay. It's just the ones that are bad, unfortunately, get such a harsh rap because they can end up with horrific things happening, like a company going under, and, you know, like, it's horrendous sometimes if you are bashed. I'm saying bashed, it's probably not the right terminology, but if you are bashed at the end of a project and your profit's gone and you can't pay your staff, and then ultimately you're going home with the project, and, you know, like, mentally that can have some horrendous effects on people. So I think because there are some stories where that's happened, the topic of conversation sometimes might have been, you know, like, blown out of proportion.
All QSs are bad.
All QSs are bad, and the mindset going into it is all QSs are bad. There probably are some that are bad, but there's also tons that are, you know,
there's loads of people that are bad, right? There's loads of bad project managers, so on and so forth. I mean, there's a lot to unpack from what you've just said. I think I would always say, and again, managing QSs. So I was a sub-EQS as well, right? So I was busy getting slapped about. So I am a subby, so you can be nice to me. But the reality is, if I was to give advice to my team of QS, if I was managing QS now, it would all be about relationship, right? I would want them, if you were our subby, I would want them to have a brilliant relationship with you, right? I wouldn't want them to have a standoffish relationship. I would want them to have a very good relationship, because something's going to happen and they're going to have to ask you for a favour, and it's a two-way street, right? It will happen for you and so on and so forth. So I think it's all about relationships, and if there is a standoffish nature between subby and QS, it's not going to be helpful for anyone whatsoever, because I can assure, like, my strategy for every project I was on was kind of become best mates with my counterpart, but also have a load of files next to me, so if you did decide to start being a whatever to me, I'd be like, are you sure you want to do that with me? And the reason I would, like, my strategy, so I was one subby out of 50 on a job, and I would think it's going to get down to the end of the project. At the end of every project, no matter how good, it's going to get a bit hairy. All of a sudden, oh God, we're not making as much money as we want. Like, which sub are you going to pick on? You're not going to pick on your mate. And look at all these files. Like, that was kind of my strategy. But it wasn't, I'm going to get a load of files and then have a load of arguments with everyone. It was, let's at least try and build this relationship and curate it. So I think it's a big part of the puzzle.
And I think subby, they need to be cleverer with in terms of, and who am I to say this, by the way, because there's obviously some situations that have happened where they've tried to be, and unfair things have happened, but they need to be smart with who they do business with ultimately, and who they're getting, who they're working with, how they're working with people, be a bit more educated in terms of what they're actually getting themselves into. Because, you know, I recorded with a subcontractor about a month or two ago, and he brought up the fact that there's so many contractors out there who might send a PQQ out to some subcontractors, and that subcontractor ultimately will pay somebody to fill it in for them because they don't understand what they're doing, but they want the work anyway. It's right. It's actually rife. It really is. They'll pay somebody to do it because they don't know what they don't know how to fill it out, which is red flag instant. If they don't know how to not physically fill it out, but they don't understand the information that needs to go into it. And then the main contractor or the tier 1 or tier 2, probably not tier 1s to be fair, but but you know, the contractor who's ultimately employing them at the end of the day, they're looking at this PQ. Okay, this guy's actually half decent, to be fair. He knows what he's doing. He's competent. He's this and that. We'll give him. He's actually really cheap as well. So like, we'll give him a go actually. So you know, there's onus on the subby to be smarter and clever with what they're actually doing with like the business they're engaging in, because you know, like it's from an uneducated perspective that they're doing that and you know, doing business with people like that. What's going to make you're going to get picked on at the end of the day, because you're going into a sector and a market that you don't understand, so you're easy pickings for people. It's almost like it's literally like, look at me, like come pick on me, I'm the one that you want to get at the end of this.
But I mean, it is also true that, I mean, we could talk about this for hours and we could talk about this for days, right? But it is true that the industry has a problem with balance, right? And I worked for, first Alimet would have been like a 20-25 million pound subcontractor, so not small, pretty big size, tier 2, sometimes working with tier 1s, like I say, and then Perma-Stelisa, who would be 2 billion euros globally, right? So we were a big company, we had in-house legal, etc. We were always coming up against a main contractor who had, if I was the QS, there'd be 4 of them on the other side. So it was always an imbalance, right? But if you go down the chain, you'll be coming up against a QS who knows a contract probably much better than you, and a subby who doesn't understand that contract whatsoever, but knows that business in construction means sign that contract without knowing what it means, right? And that in itself is a huge problem that we've got to
it's massive. And balance, but you're right in terms of the balance side of things. Do you think there's anything, I mean, I wouldn't know if this goes on at all as such, but do you think there's something to be said for tier 1 contractors who take on projects at such a low margin and they know that to make the margin they need to make, they will bash the subby, so they actually go into it with the incentive that we've basically entered this contract with our client on net zero, so we're not making any money right now. The way we're going to make money, we've won the project, we're going to squeeze the supply chain.
Well, I mean, this is again, this is where I have to temper my inner subby. But if something has gone drastically wrong with our industry, and you were describing that project earlier, highly intricate project, penthouse, you know, we've got to procure this, we've got all these different trades, it's incredible amount of work that goes into it, and then we make 2%. What? Like, who allowed that to happen? Like, who allowed that to happen, right? Because then all of those things kind of combine themselves, and then the main contractor goes, oh my God, how are we going to manage this? The only way to manage it is to do exactly what you just said, which is to squeeze the supply chain and get as much money out of it. So it's an industry like the gun is pointed at main contractors, right? So main contractors subby bash, which there is some rhyme and reason to that logic, right? But actually, how did we allow ourselves to get into a position where we do what we do? We create these amazing engineering projects. I say 2%, right? But main contractors, like the tier 1s, are making sub 5% on every single project. It's just ridiculous. Like, so
fine margins.
It's not a margin, is it?
Yeah, you're true. You're actually right.
For all the risk, if like you think about like car manufacturing, so on and so forth, right? We've got a main contractor on some projects might have like 90 trades that they have to coordinate. And they have to do that all with 5% margin at best. So I just think that, and this is much easier said than done, we talk about it loads, that actually there needs to be a collective realignment of what people pay for construction projects, because they're not paying enough, and the way we have managed it is to kick the hell out of each other.
If ultimately as well, sorry to interrupt as well, but like I've got some clients, tenants such that we'd fit out their space for them, and like at the end of the day, like sometimes they look at the bottom line, the contract value, and they're like, really, is it that expensive? And then when you actually pay, if you were to get to the end of a job and show a client, this is actually what we've made on this £500,000 project, this is what we've made.
We've worked on for 12 months with you at tender, through the design, through delivery, and then you'll want to call us back at any minute for defects or whatever, right?
I mean, I've never done it, but like, I would love to see their face at the end, because I almost feel like sometimes people, construction's an expensive industry, like to procure things, labour's, you know, expensive, and in some respects too right as well, because the skill set that they've got, and some of the things that really skilled craftsmen are able to do, you can't. It's not just every day you find someone like that, and materials are expensive, and then, you know, like overhead. It's a business at the end of the day. So like if you're making X amount of money on a project, like 15%, if you went to the client at the end of it and gone, do you know what? We did a £500,000 project. We've been through this whole process. This is what money we've made. If they're in a different industry, that is a different sector, I think they'd be really surprised.
Yeah.
I really do. I think they're like, really?
Yeah.
Well, when I saw the £500,000 contract, I was thinking, you must be...
You're creaming it.
You must be creaming it. You must be sitting bottom line of 150 grand at the end of that. No, it's not, actually.
Yeah, but and even more so for, but we've just got used to it, haven't we? Tier 1's just 2%.
Dovetails nicely onto the next topic of conversation, actually, whilst we've, because I feel like we can ramble on forever.
Yeah,
we
could.
But obviously, you're trying to change things from a quantity surveying perspective with the new company you guys have formulated. It's the two of you, right?
Yeah.
Is it two of you? Yeah. C-Link?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
10 years old we are.
Are you
almost.
10 years?
Yeah. Almost 10 years old.
So tell us a little bit about the idea behind it and what you actually wanted to do with the industry, and then tell us like the creation and how you guys did it.
Yeah. Okay. So C-Link was founded by myself, Sub-Contract QS, and Chris Barber, who was first a sub-EQS and then a main contract QS, right? So founded by two QSs. Are you sitting comfortably? But so we were sat in the pub one night and we were talking about, like, I was probably on Battersea Power Station, I was talking about like how horrendous like that procurement process had been. Chris was working in high-end resi and procuring all kinds of different trades, right? And for us, a lot of the problems that we talk about come from procurement, right? They start during procurement. So, yes, a main contractor might be on like 5% margin. But if they're on 5% margin and they've got to manage 90 different trade packages or 50 or whatever it is on that project, they need to get it right? They need to, have a bought-in supply chain that are pre-qualified and well-suited to that specific project and are aware of the project, aware of the pipeline, and then B, they need to be able to do it on high quality tender documents that the subbies typically understand pretty quickly, return their prices, and that process goes back and forth. Because at the moment, and again, I was working for a £2 billion company, so not a small company.
Huge.
We were doing it on Word, Excel, email. Some people doing it on WeTransfer. Some people doing it on Dropbox.
Well, actually, working for that company.
Yeah.
Mental.
And we work for tier 1s now, and they're doing exactly the same.
You just think, like, as a tier 1 contractor turning over hundreds of millions of pounds, like, how are you still working?
There's no system.
It's mental.
Yeah. Well, we were in with, I won't name them. I was in the office with one of them last week, and they were kind of saying, I was sat there talking to like a associate director QS who's probably on 100k plus, and he was like, oh yeah, last week I spent like almost a whole day like at the scanner scanning in, and you think what? Yeah, so kind of anyway, like the point being that the psyche of our business is, how do you make it better for the subbie, because I was a subbie, and how do you make it better for the main contractor? And if you could make it better for both, then all of a sudden you kind of make the entire procurement experience a lot better. So that's what we set out to do. We started in 2015. It's now 2025, so we're a decade in, which is unbelievable. And we kind of started working with smaller companies, and then as the product kind of developed and improved, we're now like all the way up the value chain to tier 1. So
how did you find obtaining clientele to start with the smaller companies? Because ultimately it's a bit of software. Selling software to people in 2015 in construction from smaller companies must have been very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, selling construction software is quite difficult for stop because main contractors have got a margin of 2%, so they haven't got a lot of money slushing around, and it takes a while for software to be implemented, and it takes a while for you to kind of see the value through, right?
True.
In other sectors like accounting or whatever, you kind of start to see the value within 1 or 2 months. You kind of need to see a project through and say, right, okay, that really worked. So it does take longer in some respects to see the value.
So it must have been difficult to get smaller companies on board to start with.
Smaller companies actually, interestingly enough, were probably a bit easier.
Oh, really?
Because you could kind of make an impact with them much more simply, much more quickly. The problem exists, right? So all construction companies are procuring using 1980s technology, i.e. Excel and Word, which is fine up to a point, but it's not going to get you anywhere long term, we believe. So all of them are doing it, so whether you're small or big, they all have the same problem. So it was actually a little bit easier and a bit more discreet perhaps to go into the smaller companies. And it's only in the last, I would say, 2-3 years that actually the wider industry has started thinking, oh my God, why are we doing things the way we have been doing? Things could be very different. So it's not easy either way.
Interesting. But it's just like, even like you said there, like there's loads of companies that are still basing their SOPs they're off of 40 years ago, 45 years ago, and you could probably get away with it. They might have started have a system and process in 1985, for instance, and in 2005 you can still get away with it 20 years on, and then 2010 you can probably just about still get away with it.
You can still get away with it now, right? You can
to an extent, but you mean, like, if you think about it, from a global perspective, like the whole world in terms of technology has moved on so much. So it's like it's crazy to think that you mentioned you probably can get away with it now, but like going forward with the development of the world and technology and how other people are utilizing certain softwares in construction, it's like you will fall behind eventually.
We're in the relegation zone. No, we are. So there's 22 industries, sectors of industry.
We're Southampton.
No, are you a Southampton fan?
No, mate. I'm a Liverpool fan.
Even worse.
I was waiting for you to ask that all day.
So construction, there's 22 sectors. We're 21st. We're in the relegation. We're 21 out of 22 for digitisation. Only agriculture is below us. So you can get away with it, but therein lies the opportunity as we see it, right? There's so much adoption to digital tech that could happen, that could just transform the way subbies price, main contractors receive, and you just improve the whole way. Like as a subbie, and again, you guys are in fit out, right? But my experience was as a subbie that we could have a tier 1 or a tier 2 contractor. We could have 2 QSs send us 2 tenders in the same week from the same company. One of them would look like this, one of them would look like that, right? They're completely different. And so you have to like intake that information in completely different ways, which is totally counterproductive, right? As opposed to if every time one of your clients sent you a tender, it was exactly the same, in exactly the same format, you clicked all the same buttons, how much easier would your life be, right? And how much quicker would the entire tender process be, right? But like, we say that to main contractors, and every time I say that to main contractors, like, oh yeah, that is true, we do that. And you think, well, just do it differently, right? And it's not rocket science, it's just that there's no process. So I would send it out on email with a Dropbox link. You're going to send it out on email with a different format with a WeTransfer, because there's no system in place. We can procure. We're all very good at procuring, right? You're talking about that project where there's a lot going on, but it's being procured. It's amazing. It just can be a lot better. And that's we're in the relegation zone. Let's get ourselves to the Champions League with Liverpool, right?
Premier League champions, my friend. So how many, and obviously you don't have to name names, but like how many companies do you guys work with, and do you see the adoption getting more and more as time goes on? Yeah,
I mean, so we're working with thousands now. I mean, in terms of the supply chain of subcontractors who are pre-qualified, receiving tenders, receiving contracts through the system, it's about 10,000-ish.
Wow.
And then in terms of main contractors, we're in like the hundreds, and we go from the very, very small, like even property developers, all the way up to some of the biggest tier ones, like top 10 tier ones who are now using it as well.
And if you don't mind me asking, I suppose it would really depend on the type of package you would want, but like what would it cost somebody? So say somebody wanted to sign up to C-Link and they wanted to use your software fully fledged, they wanted everything all in, like what would it cost someone to use?
Well, it depends on the size of the organisation.
Okay.
But it depends on kind of a lot of different variables, right? How many QSs, so on and so forth. But typically like £100 per user per month for the main contractor to use it.
Oh, really? Yeah. That cheap? I was thinking it was going to be expensive.
There you go.
Do you think that sometimes when you're trying to obtain new clientele, you find a losing battle because you're trying to, not only are you trying to help somebody, but you're talking to somebody who doesn't understand what it could do for them. So, and they might be 50, 60, 70 years old and they've never worked like with utilizing software. So like they don't understand. So it's working as it is. So why change something that's not broken?
Going back to 2015, right? I don't know if this would be the exact year. Sometime around 2015, 2016, I remember speaking to a client or a prospect and saying to them, like, how do you manage your supply chain? Wouldn't it be nice if you had them all in one space? You had all the prequels, you could share your pipeline, blah, blah. And he said, pointed to his pocket, and I was like, what? He was like, and he literally, it wasn't his pocket, it was his bag, right? And he pulled out this Rolodex. And he was like, I've got them all here, mate. I don't need what you need. And at that point I thought, well, this is a losing battle, isn't it? I'll just forget it. But I mean, there's definitely people who, if we go back to 2015, 10 years ago, it's amazing, a long time ago, like you're seeing like the industry evolve, and you're seeing, I guess, our generation kind of move into leadership positions, which perhaps we weren't before. So yeah, over time, you know, kids coming in now, like 18, 19, 20-year-olds are like, what on earth is this nonsense?
Yeah.
Why aren't we using tech?
Yeah.
Because when we're actually not using tech, Excel and Word I don't count as tech. It's been around for too long, right? And as good as it is, things need to change. Things can be better. Projects can finish quicker. They can finish with better margin, and we all deserve it.
No, you're right. I feel like you're selling me now.
Come on, give me 100 quid.
I'm only joking. What's the so what, just in terms of like plans with Sealing, like what do you guys want to achieve just as a company? Because I suppose you're you're niched in terms of like working with QSs, right? That's your target audience. Target market is contractors, but like niche down into the QSs.
Yeah, I mean the QSs will be the users, right?
Yeah.
Our long-term ambition, and this will scare people, is that currently we're saving about 40% of a QS's time in the procurement process, right?
That's mental. 40%.
But we think we can get it to like 54%. It's like our overall assessment. So we want to unlock. So at the moment there's like 5,000 to 10,000 vacancies for QSs, right? There's not enough QSs. Everyone's wincing, thinking, "Don't give me 10,000 more QSs," right? But actually, if we can unlock almost 2.5 days a week for a QS, that QS can actually then start to focus on, how do I actually procure the right trades? I can then go and be out on site. I can do variation. I can do all these things that otherwise I can't do, which probably in some cases lead then to like the squeeze and poor decision making, all these things. So what we want to do is we want to unlock half a week, every week for a QS who is otherwise doing a load of manual process that is completely unnecessary. And I think if you do that, some people will be thinking, going to our previous conversation, oh, that's not a good thing. We don't want a QS to have more time. But if you unlock a QS to have time to think, have time to strategize, have time to make the right decisions, you're actually going to have better projects and better margins for absolutely everyone, right?
I do agree with you completely. 2 questions I got on that. Number one, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but like, how do you work out how much time you're saving somebody? So like, really?
Okay, yeah. I mean, that is a fair question, right?
Because you say 40%, you're saving 40%, but like, how on earth would you work out?
I mean,
you put me on the spot, but that's the first thing that comes to
you're
my head.
opening Pandora's box here, I'm afraid, my friend. So I talked about the business. We've got 2 QSs in it.
Yep.
Chris, my co-founder, has kind of got what he calls like a QS algorithm, which is effectively details how long it takes you to do things in today's world.
Okay.
And we then track that versus how long it takes our clients to do. So if a tender previously took you 3 hours to issue out, for instance, and it now takes you 1 hour, you've got a net saving of 2 hours. And if you look at that over a period, because basically we kind of worked it out, and we ask all of our clients before they become a client, like, how long does it take you to do X, Y, and Z? Because not going by our instinct, going by how long does it take you as a business to do this, right? And some of them will say to us, it takes us 2 days to create a contract. And you think, what? You know, that guy I was telling you earlier about scanning. Yeah, this is our current process. And you think, okay, so for them it'd be even longer, right? So in short, we have what we call QS algorithm for how long it takes you to do stuff. We compare that with the data of how long it is actually taking QSs to do things, and you save a load of time. And interestingly, Chris he worked it out based on two projects he would typically be working on as a main contract QS at his business. And it meant that he was working for like 72 weeks of the year, which obviously is impossible, but that's how long it actually took. And so if you actually unpack that, a typical QS's workload is 70 plus weeks a year, and they're working for 48 or whatever it is, you quickly understand how many bad decisions must be getting made, how many times subby sends a quote that is cheap and you think, I'll probably just go with that. Yeah. And then like all of that just snowballs, right? So that's how we do it.
And then do you think that because essentially ultimately what you're going to be saving people is money at the end of the day, but essentially what you're saving them isn't something tangible, it's time. Yeah. So like I suppose that's quite a hard sell to people, because you're saving people time, but they're like, well, where's the physical gain here? I'm saving time, great. We all want more time, but where's the physical gain here? So it's kind of a fair assessment. I mean,
if you look at the average salary of a QS, right, which is, I think it's like 56 grand or something like that across the UK, and works out to like 31 quid an hour. And if you save 1,000 hours times 31 quid, you got 30 grand. But it is intangible, right? So
I agree with you, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but from a time perspective, time obviously is so much more valuable than money. So like anything that can save time for me, I'm all for it. I'm in for it.
But it isn't like, oh, I'll give you 10 quid and you give me back 9 quid. It isn't that. So you are right to drill into it. I guess it talks a little bit to the psyche of what should a QS be doing. And it talks to my point about KPIs earlier, right? So you should be out on site building those relationships, right?
Yeah.
But you're not, because you got 70 weeks in a year of work, so you're just grinding it out. You're sending, I won't pay that, or you're doing all of these things. You're uber stretched. So one of our clients described it as, it took us from 8 hours to do a contract to do 1 to we can do 4 in a day now, which means that they're saving. It's like 20% of the effort. And what do you do? And he's like, well, now my QSs can actually spend a couple of days on site. They can speak to their subbies. They can agree the variations with the subbies. They can do the same with their clients, build relationships, right? All the stuff that they should be doing and that previously they probably were doing before margins started getting eroded, right? Before everyone was on 2%, and then you say, all right, QS goes on to 2 jobs. Before there were there's just so many things. I think we've had a real downward spiral over the last few decades as to us as an industry, and we've reacted by doing certain things which we want to kind of reverse and just improve the way everything works.
So do you work in, and obviously you've got your software, but are you full-time in that? Or you're full-time. And when did you go full-time? Was that 2015 you went all in, or was it like
no, not straight away. It was probably, I'm trying to think, probably 2017 when I was full-time. Don't tell my old employer that I was doing that.
Part-time.
Busted. Yeah, no, all jokes aside, like September 2015 was when the company was founded. June 2016 we launched. I probably went full time at the start of 2018, I think.
And then if I'm trying to remember correctly, but 2021 was the start of the podcast.
January 2021.
Was Own the Build, not C-Link. C-Link's business, but the Own the Build. So like January 2021. So let's have a chat about this, because I love talking to people about podcasting, because not many people who are also podcasting in construction. So it's a topic of conversation I love to dive into. Yeah. So give us an idea of what, number one, like why you guys started a podcast as such, and then number two, like give us your process and like what you guys went through to actually start itself, because podcasting is it's on the face of it, I say this all the time, on the face of it, people who are watching this, they'll see this side of it, but like what me and you are looking at, which what you look at frequently anyway of your podcast, is there's equipment, there's editing, there's production, guest procurement, production, there's topics of conversation, there's distribution, there's posting it, there's copyright, there's so much that goes into podcasting. I don't think people who, and so they shouldn't as well, but don't think people who don't do it, they don't understand. So give us a why you started it, and then like your idea behind it and how you did it. So
the reason we started it, so if I talk to you about like the lifetime of C-Link, right, and frame it in the context of us as a business. So if we launched in June 2016, in those first 4 years as a business, obviously marketing budget was pretty limited, and so was marketing resource. So we actually spent a huge amount of time on, I wanted to be a journalist, right, on written content, right? So we had a newsletter, we had blog, we had templates, we did all of these different things. And we did that because, when I came into the industry, I remember being sat in meetings as like a trainee QS, didn't know anything about construction. People say, oh yeah, but the birdcage scaffold. I think, what on earth is a birdcage scaffold? Work out what that is there. No, I think we'll need a cantilever scaffold. Cantilever scaffold. There's so much jargon that you don't know about. And I kind of had this running glossary when I was a kid in construction. I thought, it'd be quite nice to just create a resource for free and in turn do some good for the industry, but also build like this big following, right? So for the first 4 or 5 years, running up to January 2021, we built a following of like about 17,000 to like our newsletter and so on and so forth.
Oh wow, that's a lot.
It was really, really good, really positive, and I quite enjoyed doing it. I wanted to be a journalist, and I got a bit of writing done. And then my head of marketing said, it wasn't, the nice lockdown where it was like sunny and everyone was kind of happy, and everyone had normal haircuts. It was January. It was deep, dark lockdown. Everyone was depressed, and he said, it must have been a few months before. He said, we're going to take the success in written form and do audio and video, right? And so once a week, every single week since then, except for Christmas, we have done an episode. We do it every Monday, and I have to say, and it might be the kid who wanted to be a journalist coming out of me, right? But it's like the best bit of my week. Sitting down with someone. I don't like networking personally. It's not something that has ever come naturally to me. Walking, that traditional walk into a room and go and shake someone's hand and be like, how you doing? You okay? I'm Paul from C-Link. I've never enjoyed it. It doesn't come naturally to me.
Here's my card that's going in the bin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because when people do it to me, I think, oh, you're rolling your eyes almost, right? I know some people are good at it and some people live by it, but for me, 220 episodes in or whatever we are now, and that is like 200 intimate conversations with someone in the industry who, after this, if I bump into you in a month, you'll know about me, I'll know about you. You build a really kind of good connection. So yeah, I love it for that respect.
Yeah, and also in terms of podcasting, it's a 24/7 networking tool. So the episodes that you've got out and the episodes that I release, they are to be listened to 24/7. Anyone can listen to them at any time.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's the best type of networking because you've got the digital networking and you've got the in-person networking like this. Yeah. When else genuinely would you and I sit down before this, but when else would me and you sit down and have this discussion ever? Whether it's in a coffee shop, it wouldn't go into this much intimate detail around the industry and around your journey. And you
can ask the questions that you want to ask, right? You're in control of it, right? Yeah. So that's also an amazing thing that I always think as the host is, what do I actually want to ask this person? And what can they teach? You end up learning so much. I've quoted a few people from our podcast just today, right? Because it helps your thinking.
It does, and it's not only from an educational but look at it from what you can get from a podcast. You can get a digital networking tool that's out there all the time. People are listening to it. I felt like I've listened to a couple of your episodes.
Only a couple?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I put over 200 out.
I bet you haven't listened to any more.
I've seen. Oh, you busted me.
But I've listened to a couple of episodes, and as weird as this sounds, and don't take this in a way, but I feel like I almost know you to an extent before you've got here.
Yeah.
And that's because of your podcast.
Yeah.
So I've almost brought into you as a person before you've got here. What an incredible networking tactic and tool that is. Ultimately before utilization of podcast and video content as such, or audio content, to be able to buy into you as a person, I would have to, number one, give up my time, and number two, I'd have to physically go and meet you, and we'd have to go
and I'd have to turn up.
Yeah, I didn't mention it because I didn't know if you wanted it, but Paul didn't turn up to the last one.
You're killing me. Let's move on.
I'm joking. But just in terms of networking, fantastic. In terms of a sales technique as well, you don't have to uniquely pitch. I know we've spoken about C-Link and what it can do, but in your podcast episodes, you're technically pitching your company just through a conversation around QSs and your understanding of it. Because people are ultimately thinking, when they think of, if anyone out there, I'd imagine this is what I would be. But if I was thinking of a surveying software, I would think of C-Link because I've listened to your podcast.
Yeah.
Number one, I don't know anyone else who's doing it in theory. But number two, because you're consistently there, and I've listened to your podcast and I've heard you guys talk about it, and I think you know what you're on about. To an extent,
flagging it.
You know what I mean? It's almost like a sales tactic as well, and not only that, it's incredible that you can sit down with people and learn from them. So
I mean, fundamentally, that is why if you go back to January 2021, and my head of marketing, he said we're really successful in written, but the world is moving audio and video, right?
Yeah.
So let's do audio and video, and he is our head of marketing. He wants to do it to help generate business, right?
Yeah.
So that is why we do. That is why fundamentally we opted to do it. What that kind of gives me individually, and I'm sure you individually, is your network is kind of like your net worth, right? As well, right? And so you end up meeting people, you end up having your perception change. And what it was really changed in my mind, right, is, and it goes back to being that little old subby QS. I used to think that the industry was pretty brutal, pretty savage, filled with people who were trying to stitch you up, right? What did I say at the start of this? I said, we should be celebrating blah, 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 and blah, because actually, you know, through those 200 conversations with those 200 different people, you kind of quickly realise there's a lot of like-minded people out there who want change, who are trying to inspire change. And so if our podcast, if this podcast does even just a little bit of turning the dial on that, then in my mind it's a success.
So you've done 200 episodes, more than that?
It was 200 in January 2025, so yeah.
There's some commitment in your weekly, aren't you?
Yeah.
There's some commitment to commit weekly.
I wanted to be a journalist, it's not enough, is it?
It is almost like technically a form of journalism, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm blagging it. It is, yeah.
But, you know, in terms of like the consistency and commitment, because I find a lot of people who either want to start a podcast or do start a podcast, they ultimately fail at the first hurdle, and that's just being consistent, actually releasing the episodes. So like, how have you maintained consistency throughout? Because it's one hell of a commitment to commit to every single week.
Yeah, it is. One, I enjoy it.
Yeah.
What I would say is that when we started, we started with like one sentence in our mind, which was the average podcast lasts, I think it was 8 episodes at the time, right? So how can you create a podcast that stands the test of time? And I dread to think I can't even remember what we were talking about, but probably the first few wouldn't have been that good, right? And you kind of build a momentum. In terms of consistency, that was something which I've always listened to a lot of podcasts, right, since it's been a thing. And you kind of, you know, the psyche is, it's Tuesday, that podcast's coming out, I'll listen to that on the way to work or at the gym or wherever, right? And you kind of build your week around when these shows are getting released, right? So I thought if we're going to be successful, I want people to know on a Monday morning on their drive to work, when they're turning from weekend to week, they can listen to us and kind of get tuned into the week. So consistency is key. It's not easy. It's much easier now in our 5th year than it was in our first year. So, but it's important, I think.
Yeah, mate, it's huge. And I think at some point in the future, the majority of companies are going to adopt some form of, I don't know how podcasts will develop, but I genuinely think a lot of companies will adopt some form of internal, external podcast and video content. And because it is, I personally, and I might be biased in this opinion because I podcast and I haven't done as many episodes as yourself, but I think I've done, you know, we're in excess of around 100 episodes with this one and my previous one. But, you know, I'm biased because like, I genuinely believe it can change not only your perception on your specific industry that you work in, or our industry as such, but any industry that anyone's recording in, but also like in terms of like the reach that you can get through podcasting. And ultimately, if you're recording a podcast in the industry, and I feel like I might be repeating myself, but like you are technically known now as the QS guy, whether good or bad, but like the QS guy.
Am I?
Only from my perception. Like, I know you as a QS, but like also C-Link as well. Yeah. Which ties into the QS perspective, but like, you know, psychologically people are thinking of you as that person and they don't even know you. Like, they literally don't even know. They've just tuned into a couple of your episodes. And also it's really good that you can, so like and by no means I'm trying to make this about me, but like this podcast, SQFT-Stories, you know, like we briefly touched on earlier about why I started it, but another reason why I started it was because there was because I was going to do my niche into D&B and fit out.
There's no one talking to you.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And like I listen to podcasts now.
Sound like a boomer.
I listen to podcasts now predominantly from an educational standpoint.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll listen to a Diary of a CEO maybe if there's someone on there that I'm interested in listening or learning about.
Yeah.
There was nothing niched into design and build, talking to me, but what I wanted to learn. Like, sorry if there's someone out there with a podcast in design and build, but I didn't know. But, you know, like, I wanted to listen to a podcast that I could learn from. So I basically ended up creating a podcast that I could listen to learn from.
Yeah. But that's the thing, right? Because you'll have listened to my opinions, you'll have listened to other people's opinions, and it actually helps to shape you as the host. As much as that's when you kind of know you're doing a good show, is that you think, oh God, yeah, that's really. I've learned something there, and you kind of digest it, and that's what we try and do in the QS realm, really.
And you know, one thing that has changed, and this episode is definitely, you know, slightly changed my perspective on things, is because I could quite easily, like you've said a couple of times, buy into the subcontractors narrative of the industry. So like you almost like so honed down onto that side of things that it warps your opinion on the industry. But this episode and also other episodes that I've recorded has actually opened up my mind to the whole industry, and that there is an argument to be said about the other side of things as well. Obviously there's always two sides to the argument, but you know, need to start taking into consideration that side of things as well, because like the industry isn't all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Like it's very easy to buy into to the doom and gloom. It's easy because, you know, negativity gets traction or whatever. And someone actually messaged me the other day on LinkedIn and said, like, I think you need to be, and I'll admit this as well, they actually messaged me saying, like, I think you need to stop being so negative on your posts.
Really?
Yeah, well, and I actually, do you know what, mate? I had a look in the mirror and I thought, I think he's actually got a point, you know.
Really?
Because not in terms of negative, in terms of my opinion, but it's what I post about sometimes, because the industry is, to an extent, when you look at it from a social media perspective, is a negative industry. From a social media perspective, it is. You know, that's what people post about, their pitfalls, like, I hate this about the industry, I hate that. And, you know, I think I fell pitfall a little bit of buying into that a little bit, and I'd post a bit and then people would engage with it and then people would share that, and I thought I was technically doing quite good because I was like, oh, I'm posting about it and people are engaging.
People are resharing or liking or commenting.
And then I thought, someone messaged me that the other day and I thought, do you know what, I kind of appreciate that. I think I should probably start being a little bit more positive about the industry. And the reason why I say that is this episode as well, but like this podcast has opened my mind to different things about the industry, and it's opened, you know, like my opinions.
Perspectives, right? Yeah.
My perspective, yeah, that's it. It's completely changed my perspective about the industry, about how our industry is actually really positive, and that it doesn't get painted in that light or that picture, you know, on social media. And I link back to social media because I'm always using LinkedIn, but it really doesn't get painted in that light on LinkedIn specifically. But that's another reason as to why this has changed my perspective, and just my you know, just my thoughts, opinions, perspective, like how I liaise with people now around the industry, you know, how I operate in the industry as well has completely changed from this podcast. Like when I look, but you know, I mean, my 15 episodes in maybe, but like in terms of like creating this podcast and releasing it, it's been about a year probably in the making. Like how I work and operate and think in the industry and treat people as well and act with people is so different from the podcast.
Yeah, we'll keep doing it, mate. You're doing a good job.
It's really incredible, just how it changes things. But what's your plans with your podcast? Because you know, you're 200 odd episodes in, and I'm assuming you're going to keep going, you guys, weekly. So like, what do you guys want to achieve from it going forward?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Put you on the spot.
What do we want to
achieve? If you flip that question, I wouldn't know either.
Yeah, I mean, what we are kind of doing with it is like we're kind of taking it to a point now where we're going to be doing. There's kind of like, if originally we started at written form and now we're at like audio and video, we want to kind of do in person as well. So
interesting.
We're doing digital events with like webinars and stuff where we're kind of showcasing our product, but also talking to a lot of the topics that really, really resonate. And then we're also doing, and again, probably shouldn't announce this here, so we are doing a very exclusive event soon at like a pretty amazing London venue.
Amazing.
And the idea really is to kind of, like, the community is amazing. I'm constantly getting messages from QSs saying, oh, listen to your podcast and so on and so forth. So it's just really trying to take that to
is that like a live event,
events.
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's that? Is that to you know, like talk about C-Link, or is that just a live event for QSs?
I mean, it's going to be it's a live event for kind of like commercial directors.
Okay.
Basically, it's kind of like for C-suite QSs, and the idea really there is A, as a networking opportunity, like-minded people. B, kind of talk around some of the topics, and C, shine a bit of a light on what we do at C-Link. So, and then you obviously have to hire a venue. You have to sell tickets, I suppose, to the venue and create. I'm not organising any of it, so our marketing team are doing it. And but yeah, no, it's a pretty epic venue in London. Is it? Very historical venue in London. That is, it's going to be an amazing event. So. Send it over. I'd love to come. Yeah. Send it over. You know, there's plans for C-Link, plans for the podcast. But what about just plans for yourself going forward? So I know you're heavily in the business, in the podcast, and just in your life, I suppose, as well, with a new kid on the way. Yeah. So like, what about plans for yourself going forward? Plans for myself are kind of execute on that original intention, right, of the business. We've made such good waves with the product. The product is amazing. It kind of exceeds my expectations. And like I said, we're already kind of at that 35-40% mark. We know we can kind of get it to 50-54% of time saved for QS, and what that could do for the industry, what it already does for our clients is amazing. So I want to get it there. I kind of am pretty fixated at the moment on the next few years, just achieving what we've kind of set out to do originally with with C-Link and the products. I don't know what goes beyond there. Maybe I'll do football journalism. Please,
you
can I do it now?
can't take the kid out of you, can you?
I don't know, mate. I really don't know, honestly.
No, it's refreshing to hear, to be fair, because it's funny that some people come in here and they've got these like, I'm going to do this in 10 years time, that, in 15 years time, that, in 20 years time, that, and then it's nice to hear like you just looking a couple of years ahead. I suppose you can put your all into the immediate now rather than.
We've got a very clear path to victory now. It's kind of like the seas have opened up.
Yeah.
We can kind of see it now.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of fixated on that because I know what we need to do to get there, and I know that the opportunity exists. So that is the intention. And kind of aside from the personal distractions that you kind of have and kid on the way, it's professionally. I think that's what we're focused on. We've got an amazing product. We've got an amazing community, and a lot of people now are starting to believe in kind of like, even just going back to that point about QS, KPIs, money. Ridiculous, right? As soon as you said, I've never really thought about it that way. Nobody thinks about it in any other way. We're all kind of like dogmatically just focused on what we're doing. And so we're just trying to shift the narrative, shift the way people perceive, shift the way people work, and everything will be better.
You make it sound so easy.
I know it's not easy, but it is. We're a decade in, right? There's a huge amount of product challenges technically to get there. There's then a huge amount of commercial challenges technically to get there. There's then also like perception, community, blah blah blah, right? And that is what the podcast gives us. It gives us a following of thousands of people who listen and think, I agree with most of what you're saying, right? I'm going to come along on that journey with you. And if you can have that, then you can start to build like a bit of a swell of enthusiasm, and that's what I think we're doing. That's what I hope we're doing.
No, you're doing it incredibly well, mate, to be fair. You really are. One question I want to leave it on, which you've probably answered it in a roundabout way during this podcast, but if you were to, looking at young QSs out there now who've just come into the industry, if you were to try and give them some form of advice of how to succeed in the industry from a QS perspective, like what would you say to them?
Go and spend a lot of time on site. Like, you won't learn anything not being on site. So go out on site and understand the dynamics of site, right? Which is site manager and project manager, site manager and QS, like the project director, how stuff fits together on site. Like, if I go back, like I said when I was 19, can you put me on site for a few days a week, right? And you just learn the dynamics of site. You learn technically, you learn the product, right? And in doing all of that, you then also kind of learn, oh my God, relationships are really important. I can't speak to that QS once a month when my valuation's due. I need to speak to them once a week, once a day. And if I can do that, I can end up being and building. Friendship is over the top, right? It's business, right? But I can build a relationship with them where they won't stitch me up, I won't stitch them up. If I need a favour, they'll do one for me, and vice versa, right? So my advice would be, and this is going to sound stupid in the context of I've built a digital solution, right? That digital solution unlocks your time to go and to go and do stuff. But I need to do business with Callum. Callum needs to do business with me, and we're only ever going to do that if we have the time to build that relationship. So get out on site, meet the people that you're working with, and don't be sat behind a computer.
Interesting. That's a great one to leave it on, mate. Thank you so much for your time today, by the way. It's been really interesting to get your perspective on things from a QS, from someone that's building a software company, such you could say. And it's been a great conversation. So thanks for your time, buddy. Thanks
for having me on. Is there going to be any further QSs, or is it over and out now? One and done.
I feel like, who else do I need on? I've had Paul on.
No, thanks very much, mate, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Anyone else, my friend? Yeah, thanks for your time, buddy, and nice one. Thank you.
Cheers.